this is time consuming. This requires time from people who are busy. It requires time from your most experienced level designers, the people whose skills you want to propagate. It requires time from your lead designers, your creative directors. It requires time from the artists who are part of this process. But there is no doubt in my mind whatsoever that this dramatically saves time. Because you're no longer leaving people to fend for themselves without a chance to find the answers that they need. They now have mentorship through this entire process. They know where the answers are. And they know how to get them. And they've seen somebody who's experienced do it. They've seen how experience works. And that, to me, is just the very tip of the iceberg when it comes to applying the design philosophies and processes that we understand and use to the art of actually making games. And give you another example, which is to look at ranking charts. Now, I'm sure we're all familiar with, building a ramping table, talking about how the user experience progresses through the game. At the start we have this item, then we introduce this item, then this character gets introduced, then this weapon gets introduced, then we have access to this new area of the map, and so and so and so and so. In a lot of ways, this is really the spine of the game. And in a lot of ways, this is classically the strategic overview work that is handled by the lead designer. This is handled by the person who can see the whole game. And in my experience, this is generally handled by the lead designer sitting down when they have a moment spare, which is generally an evening or a weekend, and sitting down and mapping out the vision of the game that exists in their mind into one enormous table. If you're lucky, it's one enormous table, so you can kind of get an at-a-glance understanding of it. If you're unlucky, it's a 60-page document that goes through and talks in detail about what's happening at every stage of the game. If you're really unlucky, it's 300 pages of storyboards, as I've seen happen in the past. I saw a proposal for a game that the company proposing it in the end didn't get, but that showed literally a storyboard for every 10 seconds of gameplay, start to finish, 20-hour game. Here's how our experience is. And while that's really good in one sense for pitching, because if you hand that to THQ and say, that's the game you want to make, executives who like pictures will be able to go, oh, yeah, it looks exciting, have $20 million.
Thank you.
And I'll put that in as a side point too. It's remarkable, absolutely remarkable to me, how much diligence goes in to signing deals and how little diligence goes into signing deals. We're a big industry competing for big contracts. $20 million is not an unusual budget to make a game with. And I've seen cases where there are pretty pictures and absolutely zero design, absolutely zero understanding of what this game is that you're going to make in terms of the player experience. It seems insane to me to sign that kind of deal. Anyway, back to the ramping chart. Think of the ramping chart, which outlines the entire game over time as you expect it to happen. And as I say, that's usually something that it's the lead designer's responsibility to pull together. It happens generally sometime as you head towards the end of pre-production because it outlines all the goals for production. It goes to the producer, who breaks it all up into a series of tasks, and those are the tasks that then get done. It's definitely one way to make a game, one way to get an understanding of how the entire game flow is outlined. But it's my opinion that as we start to get to bigger teams, as I say, design teams of 10 to 15 people, complete teams that are 50 to 60 people, that this is cutting out everything that's good about what we do, which is the opportunity to have collaborative, dynamic, iterative environments. I've heard so many people over the course of presentations in the last couple of days say that iteration is the most important thing to getting a great game. I believe that's true, and I believe it's also collaboration. Nobody works in the game industry because they hate games. Programmers could be doing jobs for more money. Artists could be doing jobs, in film and TV. There are lots of opportunities for everybody. But everybody's in games because they have a passion for it. And to have that passion ignored while one person sits down and writes up a 50-page document to tell you how the game you're going to make for the next 2 years is going to run just seems like a waste to me. When it's a procedure that can easily have multiple people brought to bear. Because everybody has opinions and everybody has feedback, and not everybody's going to read that 50-page document. In fact, from previous experience, I can tell you that if you put jokes and riddles right through the middle of a document and send it off to the publisher and it's a 50-page design document, or comments that say that they should email you to find out what should be in this section, you'll never get a single email. Nobody reads past the first 3 pages. If you're writing 50-page docs with the anticipation that people will read, grasp, comprehend and execute on that vision, then I really think you're barking up the wrong tree. Nonetheless, you can bring everybody into a process that will get them to have buy-in, that will get them understanding, that will get them their part. And it's really easy to run it like a multiplayer game. You have people come in to represent the various things that happen in your game. You may have a designer who's focusing on weapons, working with an artist who's focusing on weapons, working with a programmer who's focusing on weapons. To give an example that would fit into a pretty classic game. You can invite all these people into a room, give them white cards, and suggest that, well, here's the start of the game and here's the end of the game along the wall. Let's start pitting things up. Then you can get each department, each group of people, preferably cross-disciplinary, to come in one at a time, see where the other stuff goes, and talk about how their things will work with that. And you start to get an entire wall that starts to lay out how your project's going to be. The great thing is that once this is complete, everybody's had a hand in making it. And a big part of being a good lead designer, in my opinion, is representing everybody's contributions and getting everybody to buy in on game making. Now, it's not always possible to do this 100%. Sometimes you're making a game that somebody working on the team just doesn't like or doesn't play. But I think it's sad if you don't try. Because it's really not that hard. It's really not that hard to communicate what the game is and to start to get people passionate and involved in the experience. So now you've got this set up on the wall. And you bring people in one at a time to start looking at it, or kind of one group at a time to start looking at it. You can run any sort of game, with 30 or 40 people, but it gets harder. It's more straightforward when you can bring people in. But it's important to me to bring people in who are working on it, not just the people who are the leads of the people who are working on it. It's important to get those people who are going to be implementing those to come in to talk about them. Say, well, I really didn't want to put this gun in before you can jump because half the fun is rocket jumping and that's how I was going to do all the puzzles, so that was kind of my approach. So there's some shuffling. And I'm sure we can all think of ways to take that sort of process and make it more gaming. In general, in my experience, that is necessary. But it's easy. You can give everybody cards that say, you have one free rearrangement of an element on the board. You can get everybody together. Can't we use that? Move that there, and use this. And all of a sudden, the process of creating the game, the process of designing the game is no longer one of direct authorship. It's one of building a space where experiences happen. And on every level, I really think that that's not very much the future of what we do, and not difficult to create an environment. But it does require a new approach. It requires a new way of thinking about this. So, one of the beauties of this process, and I spent a lot of time looking at everything from classic texts on leadership to MBA programs to faddish books that you pick up in an airport talking about how today's corporate leader works.